Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another Listen with Vobes. Just checking that we are actually streaming, as ever. Always in doubt. Give me some reassurance. There we are. Yes, it is. Marvellous. We are reading Neighbourhood by Tickner Edwards. Before we get going, I have got my usual ginger and lemon, which is dribbling nicely. Hopefully no buffering today. Actually, talking of that, I should be able to put the quality of the stream up. I wonder if I can do that on the fly. I can never quite remember output. Oh yeah, here we go. Let's see if I can just change that briefly. See if that will work. If we have buffering, just let me know. Anyway, it is Thursday. It is Thursday today. My phone is going. It's going over there. That's where it's going. It's the 25th of February, 2028. 2028. Stop it. Don't get me going. Oh, lovely. Of course, that's strong. That's been stewing a while, but it's very nice. I've got the Essie lit early today because I want to bake some bread. Anyway, nice to see everybody. Let's do a quick roll call. Make sure everybody's here who should be. We have the lovely Julia and TurboStream. I think TurboStream got in before. Yes, he got in there, the early birdies. Holly and Co. Good morning to Holly and Co. I always forget where you are hailing from. Justine Jones, hello to you. With your coffee and fruitcake. Yes, I saw that just now, and I thought, what I would do to have some fruitcake. Well, I suppose I could stroll over to the shop, but is it fruitcake easy enough to knock up? I'd like to be able to do that. Billabong O'Neill, good afternoon to you. Jen Coley, Audrey Forbes Hamilton, Davey Vad, Philip and Mary, good afternoon to you. Anne H, Lee Lawson, Ed Loud, Ben Reeve, nice to see you. John F, and there we go. The time is flying by. Do you know, I was sitting down earlier in a moment of quiet ineptitude, and I was watching a tutorial on bricklaying, just like Churchill. I know I need to build a little wall in front of my house because the wall that was once there is gone, and I'd like to build a wall. I thought, well, rather than engage somebody, that's the easiest way of doing it, I could actually do it myself. And I thought, well, there must be a YouTube video on how to do it, and indeed there is many. So I thought, well, that could be quite a fun thing, plus I could video it and people can laugh. And if it turns out really rubbish, I'll just render it and pebble dash it like it used to be in the old days, and then paint it. And then hopefully no one will be any the wiser. Who are you calling a fruitcake? Well, only myself, I'm afraid. Sorry, I've got a bit of sleep in my eye. My artificial eye, incidentally, is continually getting sleep or pug or whatever you want to call it, and it crystallises. I think it's because it's asleep all the time, probably. Anyway, here we are. Holly and Co. reminding me, yes, you're on British Columbia on the west coast. Never eat shredded wheat. Oh, right over there. Golly, it takes a long time, doesn't it, for the day to start over where you are. But anyway, I hope it's a nice enough day. We are on the next chapter. I don't know what chapter this is. January, February, March. Chapter 3, I guess, because it's just called March. So that's what we're going to do. The charm of Sussex woods, though you may frequent them at all times in and out of season, is that they are never the same woods from year to year. Actually, sorry, I'm just going to stop. I'm going to stop there because I was just concentrating. I just wanted to get this off my chest. I heard this advert this morning on the radio when I was driving off to do a video, and I had the radio on, and an advert. Okay, I don't listen to the adverts, but I heard this one and I thought this person should be sacked. Not the performer, but the writer, the copywriter. And it said, I can't remember exactly word for word, but I remember pretty much. It said, "Is your car in the garage gathering dust?" And I thought, what do you mean? Of course it's not gathering dust, even if it had been in the garage for any length of time. It might be acquiring dust or accumulating dust, but it's not gathering. You know, I just had this image of a car going around trying to... Gathering is an active word. Something that's sitting there static cannot gather. Can it? Or am I being silly? That was plaguing me for a while. But gathering is an active word. You know, to gather. You can accumulate by doing very little, but you cannot gather. Anyway, I've got that off my chest now. We can commence. TurboStream says, "I made a super easy manor house cake this winter. Had to stop it as it was too nice." Ooh, a super easy manor house cake. Wonder what's in that. The charm of Sussex woods, though you may frequent them at all times in and out of season, is that they are never the same woods from year to year. The great trees, indeed, keep their old familiar forms and stations, but the undergrowth of hazel, ash, larch, or silver birch is periodically cleared away. This year, a certain hillside or deep hollow may be hidden under a thicket of growth impenetrable not only to the casual wanderer, but to the very sunlight itself. And next year the woodcutters may have swept it clean, leaving only the forest trees to cast their shadows over a sunny wilderness that your eyes, though you have journeyed this way scores of time, have never yet beheld. Clearings, wherein the children gather primrose by the thousand one spring, are overgrown and all but impassable the next. The very paths and waggon ways change their direction as the woodmen vary the scene of their labours from year to year, and in the track of the copse cutters arise all manner of new plants. New birds come to nest, new sights and sounds throng about the way at every turn. So, in nearly all seasons, a strange new land is brought to your very feet, and in the midst of things familiar may be a score of years. Lee Lawson says it's true, but it is a standard phase to gather dust. Yes, that's why I was questioning it, because I just thought it's lazy, because somebody has just assumed when they wrote the advert, oh yes, is your car gathering dust? Because actually it's one of those phrases that is, I think, grammatically wrong. Turbo, since I will email you the recipe. Oh, fantastic. Yes, that would be all lovely. What's in it? What is in it, though? That's the thing. LOL, I gather that snagged on your brain. Yes, it did snag on my brain. Ed Loud says, I fear you overthink things. Yes, I do, very much so. In the dead deeps of winter, nothing seems so remote, so hopelessly unattainable as the March sunshine. Oh, I hope that's not the case this year, because we're fast approaching March, and I want to get out. We've got down here in Sussex, by the way, just to interrupt the text, which is very laboriously irritating, I know. We've got 5 days of sunshine at least until Wednesday coming, so get your walking boots ready. Anyway, there's nothing hopelessly unattainable as the March sunshine, yet here it is at last, and here I am, sitting on a hazel stole, softly cushioned with ivy, alone and deliciously idle in a clearing I have just discovered in the heart of Windle Woods. All this part of the wood has lain untouched for a decade, perhaps given over to the jays and magpies and other wildest of wild nesting things. There is a green lane only 100 feet distant, and along it I have journeyed many a time during the past year, never dreaming that the clearing existed. And yet, No later than last April, the woodmen must have been here with their billhooks, hacking and hewing, and letting in the living sunlight where the earth had known no more than green gloaming on the brightest day. It is strange how quickly the fertile soil awakens from such a lethargy of long, dark years. From where I sit, high upon the sunny slope, I can see nothing but greenery. All that remains of the dense growth of hazel that covered this part of the wood is gathered into great square piles, looking like windowless houses set here and there on the sunny delectivity. Primroses shine everywhere, truly not in abundance of April, but still there is no yard of ground without their sulphur sheen. Red dead nettle makes a rosy flush in the grass at my feet. There is ground ivy round the base of each hazel stole, with its pale violet flowers, so minute, yet making such a brave show by sheer strength of numbers. And hovering everywhere over this still mere of sunshine, with its sunken treasure of blossom, are butterflies, great sulphur yellow butterflies, flapping idly along like tortoise shells and peacocks that have laid up through the winter, and one gorgeous red admiral, also a hibernator, veering about in the sunshine with outspread motionless wings. To this secret nook of woodland I came but an hour ago. Yet in that 1 hour of still March sunshine, I have seen and heard more things than could be chronicled perhaps in a day's hard driving of the swiftest pen. To set down only the things that dwell foremost in the memory is not easy. I had been here only a few minutes when a rabbit came racing across the clearing, dodging in and out of the hazel stalls, and in tremendous hurry and fear. On seeing me, he turned off at a sharp angle and then scurried away into the wood. A full 5 minutes after came a stealthy rustling from the same direction, and a ruddy-furred stoat drew into view, his snake-like head alternately poised high in the sunshine and lowered amidst the grass as he carefully picked up the rabbit's trail. He was going at only a tithe of the rabbit's pace, but going without an instant hesitation. Where the rabbit had turned off at seeing me, the stoat also veered sharply round. He went straight for the wood, entering it, as far as I could judge, at exactly the same spot. So he would go on, I knew, until at last his bloodthirsty cunning and pertinacity had outworn the rabbit's speed. Then a woodpecker came over the clearing, his crimson cap and tarnished jerkin of Lincoln green looking strangely tawdry and theatrical in the brilliant sunshine. He flew heavily, yet swiftly, arresting the motion of his wings at every 4 or 5 beats, much as a finch flies. As he passed over, he uttered his weird call note that sounds something like "bluey, bluey," wherein, however, there is a tang of crafty criticism indescribable. Not far from where I sat was a beech tree, and to this tree I watched him go. He climbed up the smooth bark like a cat, taking the trunk spiral-wise. Then, when almost at its summit, he stopped and beat out of the hard wood with his pickaxe of a bill such a note as can be likened to nothing else in nature. So fast fell the blows of his beak that between them no interval could be distinguished. They ran together in one smooth, continuous volume of sound. Extraordinarily musical it was, with a plaintive quality and a variableness of tone, now loud, now soft, that could not fail to impress the dullest ear. The note was prolonged for half a minute or so, and then the birds stopped to listen. Far away, over the wood-top, I heard the answering sound. For this woodpecker's music in springtime is a true love call, and you will hear it onward through the months until the last pair of birds is mated in the wood. I've heard a lot of woodpeckers, actually, and so that's very interesting what he's saying there. Exactly the same thing. They go tick, 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 tick. And then there's this great long pause. I hadn't actually noticed whether there was an answering call. But I will look out for it next time. This is the time when the queen wasps come out of their winter hiding places and the first bumblebees appear. Of the hive bees, very few seek out those isolated clearings. They all have gone to the riverside where the swallows and willows are in bloom. Not the swallows, the sallows. As I sat listening to the melody of birds and insect voices around me, trying to pick out one after the other from the chaos of song, I heard the soft note of a honey bee down in the blue veronica close at hand. Yet she touched none of the flowers. She passed all by and went scrambling down among the moss and the dead leaves. Knowing that the honey bee never wastes time, and anxious to find out what she might be doing there, I watched her as she painfully went over the moss fronds one by one, sending forth a shrill, fretful note at intervals, very like an injection of disappointment at not finding what she needed. At last her search came to a successful end. It was a dewdrop she had been seeking, one of the few that had escaped the thirsty glances of the sun. Silently she drank, and then, as she rose into the mid-air with her burden, there was no mistaking the triumphant quality of her song. At this time, water is all-important. At this time, water is the all-important factor in the prosperity of the hive, and the bee knew well she was carrying home something of greater worth even than a load of the purest honey. Leaving the clearing at length, I went homeward by a roundabout way through the oldest part of the wood. Traversing one of the shadiest paths where the oaks grew thick together overhead, I came to a turn in the way. Just beyond, there was a single spot of sunshine lying on the moss-green path, and in it a squirrel gambolled, as though he were taking a bath in the yellow pool of light. Often throughout the winter I had come upon squirrels thus, tempted out of their warm winter houses by some day of exceptional mildness, for the squirrel is no true hibernator. He sleeps through the cold spells, often for weeks at a stretch, but like the hive bees, warm weather at once rouses him from his dray and sends him forth ravenous to his secret store of acorns or beech mast. Old Tom Clemmer once told me of a custom regarding the squirrel, which, in his boyhood, was rife in the most downland villages. On St. Andrew's Day, towards the end of each November, most of the Windlecombe men and boys used to foregather on the green, armed with short sticks, shod at one end with some heavy piece of metal. The party would then go out into the woods for this, the annual squirrel hunt, or scugging, as it was called. The weighted sticks are thrown at the squirrels as they leap into the branches overhead, and some of the folk, Tom Clemmer himself among the number, were famous for their skill at this pastime. Scugging, however, being essentially a poor man's brutal sport, has long ago been suppressed. My squirrel in the pool of sunshine blocked the path, and there was no way round. I must perforce disturb him. I watched him clamber upward into the wilderness of budding oak boughs, his glossy red-brown coat gleaming in the sunshine as he went. It's a red squirrel, then. That's interesting to know, isn't it? Presently, coming into a spacious valley of beeches, where the eye could wander far and wide between the grey-green trunks over a bare, undulating carpet of last year's leaves, for scarcely anything will grow under a beech, I caught sight of an object which drew my steps over to the near hillside. It was a spot of shining white painted. It was a spot of shining white, painted about a breast high on the smooth bark of one of the trees. I knew what it meant. It was the white spot of doom, the token of the wood-reeve to his men, that the tree was to be felled. And this was the time when the sap was beginning to run strong and rinding would be easy for the death sentence to be carried out. I looked at the white spot, and if I could have saved the tree by obliterating it there and then, I would have done so gladly. Carved deeply into its wood, and so long ago that the characters were all but illegible, was a double set of initials, and between them 2 hearts at once united and transfixed by the same arrow. Below these roughly hewn signs a date appeared. I had often come upon the legend in my walks and stopped to ruminate over it. Who had cut it I never knew, nor indeed whether CD and LEW, if they were alive today, would have joined in any enthusiasm in my desire for its preservation. But somehow it came to me at the moment as an infinitely pathetic thing that the tree should be cut down after all those years and the record destroyed. It had been done so obviously for perpetuity. What kind of stony-hearted villain must the wood-reeve have been, I thought to myself, who would daub that patch of white paint so callously near to the silent eloquence of such an inscription. Out of the far distance now, I lingered over the carving in that mood of moralising sentimentality, and there came creeping over the hollow stillness of the glade a murmur of voices, and in a little a tramp of heavy feet. I recognised the gang of woodmen carrying their tools of their craft, and behind them a little rabbit of village folk, mostly children. I drew off some way up the hillside and sat down on a stump to look on at the now imminent as well as inevitable spectacle. To watch a great tree felled, especially when such a giant as this lover's tree... Hang on a minute. Itch. To watch a great tree felled, especially when a giant as this lover's tree was in question, is one of the most exciting things to be met with in country life. There is ever-growing suspense from the onlookers from the moment when the first axe blow sends its echoing ring through the aisles of the wood to that last stunned feeling after the mighty tree is down. The speed and workmanlike dexterity with which the gang now got to their task only served to intensify this sensation. One buckled on a pair of climbing irons and carried aloft 2 long ropes, securing them to the trunk at its highest point of division, while he was still up there, like a perching crow, black against the sky, another took a great glittering axe, and stepping slowly round the tree, dealt it a succession of downward and inward blows, cutting a deep ring round the whole bowl, some 6 or 8 inches above ground level. On the side towards which the tree was to fall, this cut was now widened and deepened until it laid bare a good foot beneath of the solid heart of the wood. And while the amber chips were still flying under the axe, the rest of the gang were carrying the ropes away at 2 sharp angles and binding them securely to neighbouring trees. And now began the cruellest part of the business. The great wood saw was got to work, and 4 strong men at it. Cutting close to the ground on the far side of the tree, the shining blade tore its way steadily into the wood. Inch by inch it drove its ragged teeth forward, and at every lunge it gave forth a savage, gasping scream, and a spume of yellow sawdust spurted from the cut, gathering in an ever-growing heap on the side. No other sound broke the stillness of the glen for a full 10 minutes or more. No one among the mute, expectant crowd, nor any of the woodmen, seemed to move hand or foot. All watched and waited as it appeared, breathlessly. Someone just knocked on my door. Bear with me. Someone's knocked on the door. Hello. I'm here to drop off some bread for Cherry. Oh, right, okay. Is that okay? Yeah, absolutely. She is in. Did you need to see her? No, that's right. Oh, okay. Thank you. Cheers. There's some bread here for you, Sharifa. I do apologise, ladies and gentlemen. Very unprofessional, leaving his duty. This is quite grim, this poor tree being sliced down. I love beech trees. Before I resume, let me just have a quick glance at the comments. Hello to Dudley. Is Dudley there? I see a reference to him, but I can't see his name. Maybe. There he is. Some lovely yellow butterflies yesterday on the South Downs. Ah, lovely. Lee, we had a great spotted woodpecker visit our garden this year. Very exciting. I think it comes from the Broadwater and Worthing Cemetery. Oh, yeah, a lot of woodpeckers live down there in the graves. And at night time, they spend a lot of time getting out of the coffins, drilling their way through. And it's actually, they are the dead people coming out. That's, you know, zombies are not a real thing. They actually are woodpeckers. That's a factoid that I made up. I love the early spring, says Turbo Stream, watching the bulbs pop through and start to flower. And he's put some lovely flowers up. Lee Lawson says, I hope they're not talking about red squirrels. I hope they're not why would they not be talking about them? It's nice to think that they had red squirrels, surely. We're waiting for our new scythe in the post tomorrow. Just the sort of thing that you have in the post. You've got a pass. Yes, I've got. Should have a couple of jars of jam, a couple of books. Oh, and a scythe. Oh, is that? There's a bloke coming up with a scythe now. Oh, yeah, that's him. Dark bloke, hooded cowl round his head. The Grim Reaper, I think I got it from .co.uk. Apparently he's delivering this. Yes, it's taller than I imagined, and you've got such a bony face. Poor squirrels. Can't believe they used to hunt red... Oh, I see what you mean. It's not red squirrels they're throwing the sticks at. Oh, yes, sorry. I forgot about the stick bit. I was thinking it was so nice that 100 years ago that in Sussex we had red squirrels. I think that's where I was thinking. And then suddenly, yes, I remembered the bloody sticks that they did. Swines. The forerunner of the Red Cross of Doom, awaiting the dreaded sound of the chainsaw. Yes, now the trees don't have a chance to run. At least they had a chance, didn't they, when they were marching up in their chain gang or whatever. Now with chainsaws, the trees haven't got a chance. Not that they had much of a chance before, I suppose. Anyway, let's carry on, shall we? There used to be some at Tilgate Park in Crawley. Oh, what? Red squirrels. I bet they've all gone, haven't they? Right, let's get back to the butchery. So no one among the mute, expectant crowd, nor any of the woodmen, seemed to move hand or foot. All watched and waited as it appeared breathlessly. There were just these 4 strong men labouring to and fro, the flash of the hungry saw blade in the sunlight, and the harsh, sudden screech of the direful thing every time it ripped at the vitals of the tree. The gang of woodmen had divided at a sign from their chief, and stood 3 or 4 of them bearing on each rope. The leader watched the saw, a hand on each hip. Once he raised his hand. The saw stopped. A row of steel wedges was driven in behind it. The saw began again once more, its old rasping melody. At last the hand went up again. The work was done. I could see the black line of the cut reaching within an inch or so of the deep axe cleft on the face of the tree. Long ago, on shipboard, I had been present at the firing of one of the heaviest guns that ever put to sea, and what followed now reminded me strangely of that deafening experience. The leader marshalled his men and directed operations with short, sharp words of command, much as the gun lieutenant had done. There was the same busy preparation and scurrying to and fro, the same moment of suspense, the same terrific outcome. Every available man was now set to haul on the ropes, while the leader of the gang himself took a mallet and with mighty blows drove the wedges in. Thick and fast the blows fell, and their echoes went chevying each other down the ravine. Chivying? The vast spreading tree quaked, lashed its branches wildly about overhead. The crowd of waiting children, and old women were ordered farther back from the zone of danger. Now the great mallet redoubled its blows, and the 2 gangs of men bore on the ropes with all their might and main. Still, though the commotion overhead increased to the force of a hurricane, no other sign of movement other than a faint shudder was visible in the trunk of the tree. One last blow of the mallet, and one last pull altogether, and then a sharp crack sounded, as it were, as if from the bowels of the earth. The ropemen leant back in one huge final effort, then dropped the ropes and ran for their lives. There came a slithering, tearing noise as the mighty beech toppled forward, tearing itself from the clinging, cumbering embrace of its age-long fellows. Then down it came to earth with one long, rolling, thunderous, cracking roar. Where I stood, I felt the solid earthquake and shudder. Between the moment when the uppermost branches of the tree began to force their way in a wide descending arc through the thicket of intercepting branches and the moment of the last terrific boom, as the trunk struck the earth, there seemed a strangely long interval of time. Another thing struck me with all the force of unimaginable novelty. all the undermost branches of the tree as it fell were splintered into 1,000 fragments, and these, flying upward and outward in a great cloud, gave an effect as if the mighty trunk had fallen into water. And now, as I learned for the first time why all the poor folk had followed the woodman with their basket. And now I learned for the first time why all the poor folk had followed the woodman with their baskets. The tree was no sooner prone on the ground, and the last soaring splinter come rattling out of the sky, than a rush was made to the spot by all. Here was firewood in plenty for everyone, as much as each could gather and carry, and it was firewood already chopped. Phew, it was quite tricky. And quite emotional. People are chopping down trees with no ceremony and no sorrow, really, I guess. Now, with chainsaws, there's no ritual to it at all. It's just bang, like so much of modernity. And here is a description with such beauty, such terror, and yet such respect. And also in some unfortunate way, a sense of poetry, but quite ghastly, really. Beech could have been used better than for firewood. Yes, I think the firewood is really the branches that splintered off on the way down. I'm sure the main trunk and the main branches, the thicker branches, are going to be used for something else, I would think. I think it's not that the whole tree was going to be used for firewood. Turbo says, an old oak blew down last week by me. Everyone rushed to collect some small logs. Nothing changes. Interesting, actually. I mean, I walked back. I was up near Sisbury this morning, and I came back, and there are piles of what looks like beech, but I'm not sure what it is, stripped of branches, about 6-7 feet long, of trunks or thick branches. 6 to 8 inches or maybe more in diameter, piled up in about, I don't know, 8, 10, something like, and then there's another pile and another pile. There's been a lot of wood clearance. I just couldn't get my van close enough. It was Tennyson who first set us looking for kingfishers in March, though indeed the sea bluebird makes the riverside beautiful at all seasons. There is a little creek here, winding away from the main current of the river through a thicket of willow and alder, where, coming stealthily along the shadowed footpath, you can always hear the shrill creaking pipe of the bird, and generally catch the glint of his gay plumage as he darts downstream or sits on some branch overhanging the clear brown water. I don't know if you can hear that in the background somebody is actually doing some sawing or sanding or something with my neighbour. There's a sound. But it was from the stern seat of the old ferryman's boat that I learnt whatever I know about kingfishers and river life in general, and these secret excursions seldom began until March was well under way. For me, therefore, the kingfisher, as for all Tennyson lovers, is most clearly associated with the still barren hedgerows and brakes, the song of the thrush mounted high amidst leafless branches, and that wonderful array of crimson tassels and brown bobbins, all set in a mist of pale green needles, which at this time makes the larch one of the sights of the countryside. Can you hear that? Can you hear the ghost of the tree in the book? Is that what it is? Moaning away.
Oh, I'm coming for you.
No doubt on their way to Shoreham Harbour, the largest timber handling port of the south coast of England. Oh, right. I have said secret excursions, and indeed all my relations with old Runridge during recent years have necessarily taken on this furtive character. It was not always so. In happier days, when the old man was a widower, I used to drift down to his cabin by the waterside for a quiet pipe at all seasons of the day, and openly, whenever the mood seized me. Then, if tide and the weather served, we would take a little skiff and go off for hours together, exploring the schist nooks of the river, either with or without the ancient fowling piece that hung over his kitchen hearth. At these times the ferry was left to take care of itself, which it did sufficiently well, there being often quite a collection of pennies on the thwart of the boat, when the old man got back from these unpremeditated truances. But one fateful day, a distant cousin of Runridge arrived on a visit, a sedate, ponderous woman, very black as to the brows and eyes, and with a hard, shiny face whose colour seemed all on the surface like red paint. She never went away again, and for within the month she became Mrs. Runridge. From that day, for peace and quiet's sake, the old ferryman and I pursued our ancient courses by stealth. Fortunately, Mrs. Runridge had a genius for household economy, which led her to ensue the village shop, and took her off with her basket at least once a week to Stavisham and its cheaper wares. This was always our opportunity, and regularly on the market town days, when Mrs. Runridge and her basket had been safely stowed in the carrier's cart, and it had trundled the distant bend of the lane, the little green wherry set forth over the shining tide with its self-congratulatory crew bent on visiting the Harns and looking for reed warblers' nests or anything else that might fit the occasion. Today we went up on a full tide and turned into a little creek where the kingfishers have their nests. It's been one of those dead-still, cloudless days, so often come in mid-March, just before the gales of the equinox, a halcyon day, in very truth. As our little craft sped up the glittering pathway of the waters, hardly a whisper sounded in the dense jungle of the reeds that flanks the river here on either side. The treetops, motionless against the sky, one clear blue arch, except where just above the horizon a series of white clouds peered over the hilltops like a row of beckoning hands. The willows on the bank were full of yellow blossom in which the bees crowded. Their soft music was with us wherever we went. Larks carolled overhead. Thrushes, blackbirds, hedge sparrows sang in every bush. There was a great cawing and dawing from the rookeries, where the black companies had returned for the season and were busy furbishing up their nests. We drove our boat's prow through the willow branches that all but hid the entrance to the creek, then let her drift idly down the narrow way until we gained the broader basin near the footbridge and moored her to an overhanging branch. Keeping quiet and still in our corner, we had only to wait a few minutes. The familiar high-pitched cry rang out from the sunny breadth of the river. And then, into the cool grey light, came what looked like a flying spark of emerald fire. The bird perched on a wand of sallow that dropped nearly to the water just opposite our retreat. Here he sat a while, carelessly preening his magnificent feathers. Below him the water lay glassy still and clear, reflecting his tawny breast and the rich checkerwork of the gold blossom and blue sky overhead. The kingfisher did not watch the stream with that motionless vigilance that one reads in all the nature books. He seemed to give the gliding water a scarce thought, but to be intent only on the contemplation of his own finery as he twirled on his perch, reaching now and again over his shoulder to set straight a feather that had gone astray. But suddenly he stopped in his popinjay performance, pointed his bill downward, and plunged like a stone. The glittering emerald vanished. On the mirror of the waters there spread ring within ring of light. What seemed like whole minutes passed in waiting and silence, and then all the brilliance, green and blue and amber, burst into view again as the bird came up in a scatter of diamonds and lanced straight back to his perch. Now we could see he held a minnow, a little writhing atom of silver, crosswise in his beak. He struck it to and fro on the hard wood until he had killed it. Then, at a single gulp, it was down his throttle. Again the kingfisher sat preening his gorgeous plumage with the same dilettante touch and light carelessness, as though the shining treasure of the waters below concerned him not a jot. I feel I should leave it there, even though we are only at 1:45, for the next piece is quite long, and I would hate to interrupt the artistic flow of the author. But how lovely is that? How lovely is that? Maybe we come back to that. How are we doing? It's 1:45. I wonder if I can just do this last. There's 3. I could do just this last bit. Shall I just do this last bit? We might be able to get it through. Better real crafted furniture from wood than stuff from IKEA. Andrew Norris, you will appreciate tomorrow's video. Might have a slight hint of that. I think I can just get through this in 10 minutes. So if you bear with me, we'll do this and we get to the end of this next section. Why not? Seeing as I'm enjoying myself. I often wonder how it is that the old saying about March and its leonoline or lamb-like incomings and outgoings should have kept so sturdily its place in proper credence. Looking through a pile of old notebooks ranging back over a couple of decades or so, I find that in the majority of years, March has both begun and ended in the lamb-like character. The lion appears only in the role of an interloper, a go-between, for almost inevitably there has been a period of chilly, riotous weather some time after the middle of the month. So it has come about this season. Yesterday was a day without a flaw, and as the sun began at last to melt and decline, dragging a net of shining golden haze behind it over the western hills, I gave up a day-long, though still unfinished task, and went to sit a while on the churchyard wall. The northwest wall is the last rampart of Windlecombe. It is made of flint, with an oval red brick coping of generous breadth. There is none in the parish, as far as I know, but can be comfortable upon it. Sitting thereon, side-saddle-wise, You have a view, on the other hand, of the grey stones and evergreenery of the churchyard, and on the other, your glance can wander unchecked straight down the Coombe to the river, then forward over the brook country to the far-off Staversham woods. And yet the light had abated scarce a jot of its dynamic brilliance. Shadows were long, and the white house-fronts had taken a leaven of rosy sweetness. But in the most retiring nooks it was still broad day. I turned my back on the serene prospect of level plain, where here and there the sunlight picked out a glittering coil of river, and set myself to the contemplation of a remarkable fellowship near at hand. Close by the wall stood an almond tree, its wide spreading branches covering to the tips with pink blossom, and behind it glowered and gloomed a venerable yew. The one tree, as it were, reached out glad, warming arms to the spring, squandering its all to make 1 hour of joyous festival at the return of the prodigal light. The other turned but a niggardly side-eye on the inflowing radiance of the season. It seemed to be doing its least and worst to discount the extravagant jubilation of its neighbour. For very shame it could not wholly resist the call of sunshine. Grudgingly it put forth, at the tip of each sombre green frond, a sparse sprig of lighter green. And because the almond tree threw down its spent blossom in largesse of rosy litter upon the grass below, this dour-natured vegetable, turning its necessities to virtuous account, now shed the dead brown buds of a foregoing year, sending this rubbish fluttering to the earth with the same hesitant sidelong action with which the almond petals fell, as though in mockery imitation. As I sat on the wall with my back to the declining sun, humouring this and many similar far-fetched vain conceits as I best anecdote, humouring this and many similar far-fetched vain conceits as the best anecdote I knew against the day's long overstrain of fancy, high overhead in the church tower hard by, the bell began its quiet summons for evensong. Through the gaps in the thicket of ilex and laurel, I saw first the tall, gaunt figure of the Reverend go by on the litten path, with his vast, confident stride, the pallid threadbare of a curate flickering at his heels. After them came Miss Sweet, the rich and lonely spinster up at the great house, mincing along under the puce sunshade with an extended handful of ivory books. Then Miss Coles came from the farm, as hot and out of breath as ever. Finally, at the respectful interval carefully calculated, 3 or 4 of the village women dribbled through and disappeared into the north porch after the rest. The usual weekly congregation being now complete, the bell stopped. The harmonium gave out one low, sonorous note, which on weekdays was the beginning and end of its share in the service. For the next 20 minutes no other sound drifted over me but the chucking and whistling of the starlings on the chancel roof. And then, having become again immersed in the affair of the yew and the almond trees, both now alike, steeped by the setting sun in the same rose-red dye, I was startled by a hand on my arm. Sorry, I'm reading this last bit pretty atrociously, and I beg your pardon, I should have stopped earlier. The Reverend stood at my side, ruddy-faced, red-beard, the very blackness of his clothes changed mysteriously to the like glowing hue. His kind eyes looked straight into mine, just as if he could see them. "A fine evening, isn't it?" he said. "Just one rich flood of crimson without form, only a great light spreading up the sky from where the sun has disappeared, spreading up and gradually paling and changing until there's nothing but pale blue, with one silver peg of a star sticking in it. Isn't it so?" "Why, no, it's not quite like that," said I, considering. "The star is there, sure enough, and the great red light, but the red light does not merge into the blue. It melts gradually into a wandering, luminous, metallic green, with the star, almost white, swimming in the midst of it. Far overhead, the sky is blue enough, and up there more stars are blinking out every moment. But the green, if only you could see its—" "Snow," interrupted the old vicar placidly. "What?" "Snow. Wind first, a gale perhaps, and then the snow. You will see. What says the almond tree here?" "It says," I contended, "but one word, spring. Abound new life and growth, sunshine, kindling stronger and stronger every day, the winter gone and already half forgotten. With every pink bloom it promises nightingales and white flannels and straw hats and— Ah, and you will never grow up now. You're too old. The almond blossom? It lies in my memory always side by side with the snowdrop and the Christmas rose. Snow flowers, all three. Wait a little and be convinced. But now look, tell me, which way is the chimney smoke blowing?" "Blowing? There's not a breath of—" There was more than a breath down there in the far away of the coombe, although here we could feel nothing of it. Under the deep red dusk I could make out the smoke plumes from the village chimneys, all driving off at a sharp right angle to the south. Even as I looked, there came a sudden flaw of wind overhead that set the yew boughs rocking, and its voice again was the old remembered voice. The north wind again. Somewhere in its black tangled depths the yew tree creaked derisively. The Reverend put his arm through mine. "But it is mercifully late," he said, as we turned homeward together. "Arlet need not fear for his lambs now, nor I for mine. Is the sky already overcast, or am I only blinder than usual?" And that is the last of that section as they toddle off home, and that's where I shall leave it. Thank you very much for joining me with that thrilling episode of Country Life with the neighbourhood and the chopping down of the beech tree and the red squirrels dancing in the light and the almond tree dancing equally in the spring against the sad-looking yew. Interesting. There we are. Turbo Stream says, "I'm glad we carried on with this book. Such a descriptive text." It is, yes, I'm absolutely thrilled myself. Thanks to everybody who's, including Lee, who's, pushed me forward after that first fateful day. "Such lovely writing," says Anne H. "He really takes you for a walk, and through his eyes you not only witness his adventure, but capture his feelings along the way." Yes, absolutely. I wish he'd written more. You know, you get these authors who, I've no idea how long it takes somebody to write so magnificently as that. Whether that, it takes a year or so to write something like that with continual rewrites and changing. You imagine that somebody like that, it just flows out of them. But having done a bit of writing myself, I know it doesn't bloody flow out of you at all. But there we go. It is a great discovery, says Andrew Norris. Thank you for the reading, no problem. Brilliant. Thank you very much. It's Thursday today, so tomorrow is Friday. We will get to the last section of this week's reading, but rest assured we are we're about a quarter of the way through. So if that's 1 week, we've probably got another 3 weeks of it. So that's nice, isn't it? Very nice. Anyway, take care. Thank you so much. I need to prepare for a phone call, which I'm making for my In Conversation With podcast at 6:15 today. In the meantime, I've got to get some dinner going. So thank you so much. Look after yourselves. It's no longer dark. That's the nice thing. You know, we said it in yesterday's episode that you suddenly wake up and you realise that the winter is over or something because it's no longer dark in the evening. Now, when I come out from doing this, it used to come out and everything was dark. And now I can see through the slit in the curtains that it's still light. And that's so rewarding. So nice. It's hard to even believe that it was dark at 5 and it's light here in Sussex. Anyway, there we go. Dudley Sawyer, good stuff. Looking forward to tomorrow's reading. Pip, pip, bye-bye for all. That's the same thing. The link is to the manna full cake recipe. Oh, is that what it is? Thank you so much. I shall have to check that out. Oops, something went wrong. I've just lost the... Can I go back? I can't go back. How do I go back? I have just lost my chat. So I can't bid you adieu in the chat because I have just... Isn't there a view page source? I can't go back. Why can't I go backwards? No. I went and pressed that link and it's tried to No, I can't go backwards. Oh well. There you go. Sorry about that. I can't see the comments now. They've all just vanished. Hey ho. Take care and I will catch up with you tomorrow. Bye bye for now. Bye.